one of the most famous dates in history. A king falls, a conqueror rises, and England is changed forever. But what if one of the most important parts of that story is wrong? For nearly 1,000 years, the story has gone like this. Harold Godwinson, the last Anglo-Saxon king, defeats a Viking invasion in the north of England. But almost immediately, he hears that another enemy has landed in the south, William the Conqueror. So Harold rushes his army south, nearly 200 miles. In just over a week, his men arrive exhausted, worn down, unprepared, and at the Battle of Hastings, they are defeated. That brutal march has long been blamed for everything. Harold's loss, William's victory, the end of Anglo-Saxon England. But now, new research suggests, that march may never have happened at all. The traditional story begins in September 1066, when Harold faces an invasion led by the Norwegian king Harald Hardrada. At Stamford Bridge, Harold wins a stunning victory. Hardrada is killed. The Viking threat is crushed, but there's no time to celebrate. William of Normandy has already landed on the south coast. According to the long-accepted version of events, Harold immediately turns his army around and forces them on a desperate march from Yorkshire to southern England. It's a powerful image, a determined king racing against time, pushing his men to their limits. But it's also a story that may have been built on a misunderstanding. Historian Tom Licence took a closer look at one of the key sources for this period, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. In it, there's a line that historians have relied on for generations, that Harold's fleet was sent home. For years, that was taken to mean the ships were dismissed, sent back to their ports, no longer in use, which would mean Harold had no choice but to march south on foot. But Licence noticed something important. In Old English, the word home doesn't necessarily mean what we think it does. It doesn't mean dismissed. It means a base, a central place. In this case, London. So instead of disbanding his fleet, Harold may have done something very different. He may have sailed it south. If that's true, then the entire narrative changes. Instead of forcing his army on an exhausting march, Harold could have transported large parts of his force by sea. Faster, more efficient, and far less physically draining. Suddenly, the image of a weakened, exhausted army arriving at Hastings starts to fall apart, and in its place, a very different picture emerges, one where Harold is not reckless or desperate, but calculated and strategic. In this version of events, Harold defeats Hardrada in the north, then returns south by ship. His forces regroup in London, rested, reorganized, and ready. From there, Harold moves toward the south coast to confront William, but he may not have been relying on just one approach. There's evidence to suggest he also sent ships ahead, possibly to trap William's army from the rear. A pincer movement. If it had worked, it could have trapped the Norman forces between two English attacks. But timing is everything in war. The fleet arrives too late, and the decisive moment has already passed. The battle itself was not the one-sided defeat it's often imagined. To be, Harold's army formed a shield wall, a dense, disciplined line of soldiers with overlapping shields. For hours they held their ground. Wave after wave of Norman attacks crashed against them, cavalry charges, archers, infantry assaults. And still the line held. This was a close fight, a fragile balance, the kind of battle that could turn on a single mistake, or a single stroke of luck. Eventually the English line broke, and somewhere in that chaos, Harold was killed. Most people know how that happened, or at least they think they do. The famous image shows Harold struck in the eye by an arrow, a moment captured in the Bayeux Tapestry, but that version of events may not be true either. Earlier written sources don't mention an arrow at all. Instead, they describe Harold being surrounded and cut down by Norman knights. No dramatic long-distance shot, no symbolic image, just the brutal reality of close combat. If that's the case, then one of the most iconic scenes in English history may actually be a later invention, possibly even propaganda, Taken together, these new interpretations change something fundamental. They don't just adjust small details, they challenge the entire idea that Harold was doomed by his own decisions. Instead of a tired, desperate king making a fatal mistake, we see a capable commander using ships, coordinating movements, and preparing for battle, and that raises a bigger question. If Harold wasn't exhausted, if his army wasn't weakened, then why did he lose? The answer may be uncomfortable in its simplicity, because sometimes history turns on chance, a delayed fleet, a broken shield wall, a moment of confusion in the chaos of battle. If things had gone slightly differently, it might have been William who fell that day, and Harold who became the defining ruler of England. But that's not the story that survived. Instead, we inherited a version shaped over centuries, influenced by chroniclers, interpretations, and even Victorian historians who helped cement the idea of the doomed march. And like many historical facts, it became accepted without being questioned. Until now, because even after nearly 1,000 years, history isn't finished. Please like and subscribe.